Now, the second course that I attended this year was the MBS Education for General Practice. And this is hosted by Business for Doctors, and specifically by April Armstrong, who runs Business for Doctors. And they have a Facebook group that is absolutely massive. That is probably the biggest Facebook group here in Australia for doctors who are interested in business in general. Now, the reason why I did this is because here in Australia, every time you see a patient, you have to bill them. And effectively, you use a different code depending on what service you provided for them. So if it was just a straightforward consultation, then you use the time-based code. If your consultation was less than 6 minutes, a number 3 code, which is set at a certain price. If it's over 6 minutes, but under 20 minutes, you use a 23 code. And if it's over 20 minutes, you will use a 36 code. And all of those codes have different prices. There's also a 44 if your consultation goes over 40 minutes, of course. But that's not it, because if you create a care plan for a patient, or if you're doing a health assessment, or if you're doing a COVID eligibility assessment, then you use a different number, a different code, and that attracts a different price each time. So if you come from a country where you're paid by the hour and you don't have to worry about what kind of service you're providing, you just kind of do your GP stuff, then working in Australia is so different from that point of view. So generally, my first protocol for most things is the RACGP. So I go on the RACGP website and see if they have resources that pertain to what I'm interested in or what I want to learn more about. Whereas in the case of the MBS billing, and I haven't really found any really good resources on the RACGP website. Whereas I personally found this 2-day conference, and I did the one in Melbourne, and I can explain why I did the one in Melbourne in a second. I found this 2-day conference super useful, and it was extremely eye-opening for me. And then another fringe benefit of attending this conference is that you are talking to people who are like-minded and who are potentially a bit more business-oriented and who like to talk about money within GP actually. And so another really cool thing that I got from that conference is I met a great guy called Brett who introduced me to Stream Deck, which is something that I'll be talking about a lot more in one of my other videos. Stream Deck is like this little tiny keyboard where you can program shortcuts to speed up your workflow. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, I'm massively into workflow and productivity. So that's something that I'm going to cover in a lot more detail. I'm based in Perth in Western Australia. And the reason that I attended the conference in Melbourne is that I really like the idea of exploring new places. And I love how in Australia, I can actually tax deduct my flight to the place where I'm doing the conference. And I can also tax deduct the hotel room that I'm staying in. And so what was happening is that I went to Melbourne, I got to do the conference, which is super interesting. But then in the evenings, I got to explore Melbourne. And I felt that that trip was somehow cheaper through that tax deduction. So a lot of people ask me, what did I get from the MBS billing course and whether it paid itself off? I haven't spoken about the price. I paid $1,184, and that was just for the conference. So you do have to add in flights and you do have to add in the hotel stay. Now, before I go into those 3 things that have really changed for me after this conference, the conference has definitely paid itself off, because by understanding the MBS, you are able to provide services to your patients that attract a higher benefit. And through that, you effectively make more money. And this is something that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't attended the conference. So the 3 things I got out of it, firstly, I'm way more comfortable with health assessments. So everyone over the age of 75 should have a free health assessment every single year. And the great thing about the health assessments is that you can have your nurse spend time with the patient, and that actually counts to the time of the health assessment, which isn't the case with a standard GP consultation. The second thing to be mindful of is all patients between the age of 45 and 49 can also have a free health assessment. And I feel that since I've been doing that, a lot of our 45 to 49-year-old patients, again, having had this really long consultation, which is about an hour, half an hour with the nurse and then half an hour with me, and they don't have to pay for that. And the MBS benefit for that is quite substantial for GPs. I've had a lot of 45 to 49-year-olds actually readjust their lifestyles and start living a lot healthier. So on the one hand, people are like, oh, you're just using these numbers because it's like more money for you. And I started reflecting on the fact that since I've been using these extra numbers, I feel that my patients have been receiving better care. Because although you might argue you do a bit of kind of lifestyle and prevention with every single GP consultation, to have an hour with a patient who's 45, who is at a stage in their life when they can actually make meaningful changes to their lifestyle, as in diet, exercise, smoking, alcohol, and that will benefit them for the next 20, 30 years. I think that's something that shouldn't be brushed aside just because GPs get more money for doing health assessments. So that's my personal view. If you feel differently about it, feel free to leave a comment below. Actually, don't leave a comment if you feel differently about it. But if you agree with me, do leave a comment so then we can kind of keep this positivity going. Now, the second thing I got out of the course was understanding these extra numbers like the COVID eligibility check, which will probably expire soon enough, and also the smoking cessation one, which again, you can add on to your consultation. So a lot of people feel that adding the smoking cessation number when you actually ask about smoking is kind of milking the system in a sense. But realistically, there's a lot of research and evidence to say that if you even just signpost, listen, I have you down as a smoker. Are you still smoking? If you do that every single consultation when you know the patient is smoking, but you're very non-judgmental about it and you're very non-confrontational information about it. You're just kind of gathering information, really. Studies have shown that patients will think, oh God, he asked me about smoking again. Should I actually start addressing it? I mean, you could argue patients will feel, oh, he's just really annoying. He keeps on asking about smoking. But realistically, if people stop smoking, that is probably the single most powerful intervention that you can do for yourself to improve your health. And so my understanding is that the MBS probably understands this and they want to actually reward GPs for asking about smoking every single time. Obviously, when patients have stopped smoking, then you don't bill that number anymore, but then your patients are going to be getting the benefit of actually not smoking. Okay, rant over here. And the third thing that really changed the way I do things is printing out your report after every single day. Because what I realized is that even though I was using all these extra numbers and I was kind of providing these extra services for the patients, our receptionists actually didn't really know how to add in those numbers. So they just kind of were quietly not adding them. So at the end of the day, you spend so much time counseling patients about these extra things, about the COVID jabs, about smoking, health assessments, management plans. But then effectively when it comes to paying for the consultation at the end, because the receptionists didn't really know how to use those numbers, they just weren't being put through. And I don't know how long this went on for. When I finally started printing out those reports, I was like, we're missing numbers here. Effectively, we're missing money here. And then luckily, like with most things in life, people don't do these things maliciously. It's more often than not just a lack of training. And so we went to the practice manager and we taught all of our receptionists how to add in these extra numbers at no extra cost to our patients, but at the benefit of us and the practice. So number 3 is do print out your reports. Some people have suggested to me that that's just an absolute waste of time. Personally, I have to say it probably takes me about 3 to 5 minutes, and I've probably found about $400 to $500 worth unbilled items. So if you convert that to your hourly rate, that's actually not too bad.